Bulldog and the Rude Awakening Show. This is the Rude Awakening Show on demand.
We have Dan Bacadol from Veep. This time he's on Made for Love on HBO Max. Explorer Vanessa O'Brien is promoting To the Greatest Heights, Facing Danger, Finding Humility, and Climbing a Mountain of Truth. Then we're talking to Luke Hefner promoting The Last Cruise on HBO and HBO Max. All that and a whole lot more.
Joining us right now, like I said, I've been really looking forward to speaking with our next guest, Explorer Vanessa O'Brien. Good morning, Vanessa.
Hi, good morning, Bulldog. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you.
You sound very excited.
You are.
Great. It's good.
Coffee? Much?
There must be the coffee.
Yeah. That's I know our buddy Art. He just fuels you up with coffee and says, "All right, just talk for the next 6 hours to all these different friends of mine."
Go.
Right? That's what he does.
Something like that.
So your story is fascinating. And I know you have some world records out there, and we're here to talk about the book, To the Greatest Heights, Facing Danger, Finding Humility, and Climbing a Mountain of Truth. What set you on the course for this, Vanessa?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, I did not set out to do any exploration whatsoever, but there was a catalyst, and the catalyst was sort of that last Great Recession, and I was looking for something to sink my teeth into, and there's a couple of different versions of this, and depending who you talk to, I think all of them are true, but somebody whispered the word Everest, and it echoed Everest, 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 like one of those, DVDs.
What were you doing before this? What were you doing in 2006, 7, 8?
I was in financial services, so that hit us pretty hard. Gotcha. That was the subprime mortgage crisis.
Yes.
So financial services was out. There's no doubt about that. And I was looking for something to do, but it was like the shoe didn't fit, right? It couldn't be financial services. I did want something goal-oriented. I wanted something that would last 2 to 3 years, something that I could sink my teeth into, that would take up some time, that I could really put a lot of effort into. But when somebody said Everest, it was like I knew it had happened then in 1953 with Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, and it was also happening now in a commercial sense. The question is, is it something that I could do having no climbing skills? And the funny thing is I never looked at it as something I didn't have. It was more like climbing is a skill that could be learned and therefore taught. So I could just learn how to do it. And the question was, would I like it and be any good at it more than, stopping me from actually going out to find out what that would feel like.
Where do you start? What's like when you start getting into this? Because that sounds like a pretty. Well,
yeah. So for me, I think. One, I was in Hong Kong, so it depends where you are geographically. So from Hong Kong, the best place to go is New Zealand. Okay. If you're in the U.S., you'd go somewhere where the 14ers are, somewhere like Colorado, somewhere you can get a little bit of height, get some training, learn what all that kit is, right? Because, when you look at climbers, you see a bunch of kits, so you want to know what a helmet is, what a harness is, what those things on your feet are called crampons, and how to use all this stuff. So that's really what I wanted to know is, what is all this stuff? How do you use it? Why do you use it? And so when I was writing the book, I actually take the climber through the process of learning how to climb. Not technically, but why Everest? I'm Googling Everest as I'm learning about it in the book. So we Google it together. Where is it? How high is it? They're learning about all this stuff as I'm learning about it and going on the journey with me. And I don't think I've ever seen a climbing book like that. So you don't really have to know anything about climbing. In fact, I don't really think of it as a climbing book at all. I think of it as a book about doing something different, something that you have no experience in, and getting outside of your comfort zone.
Well, that's outside of everybody's comfort zone. I mean, that's really out there.
Yeah, it's not even on my radar comfort zone.
Exactly. Because to be honest with you, I had a similar, when you heard the word, I had a very similar experience. I never shared it with you guys. Same type of thing. I was at a point, we didn't know what I was doing, and I heard the word Everest as well. And I made a reservation at the Everest Room in Chicago and had a fantastic dinner. I don't know if you're familiar with
it probably had a view.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it had a great view, yes. But anyway, back to you.
Yep.
Okay, so so now you're off and you're on this adventure and you're going to find these new heights, and it's an incredible journey. And don't you have to like get permission to climb Everest?
Well, you need permits and all of that stuff, which is great. And I think when you fast forward in the book, part one is sort of the pursuit of Everest, which is where it starts, and that's what it's all about. And I have my first failure, which is important because I think, hey, I have leadership and, all these skills from the business world, but they're insufficient because in the business world, you're taught to be in control. But with Mother Nature, she quickly lets you know that that's not how it's going to work out here. That there's a higher force. So and that there's some things that you can't control.
So your first attempt? I mean, obviously you're attempting the summit, but you said you failed. I mean, what happened along the way? Well,
actually, my first in the story, I climbed Kilimanjaro for fun and not really as a mountain, but just as one of the things you might do.
Well, who hasn't, Vanessa? I mean,
I had been higher than base camp, so I wasn't attempting the summit. I was attempting something called Camp 2. Okay. So when I say I failed, I mean that I did not get to my objective, which was Camp 2, and I realized that climbing was harder than I thought it was going to be. That there were things that you needed to know, not just technical skills, but you needed to understand about how your body acclimatizes at high altitude, what these red blood cells are, why people climb up, why they go down, what pulmonary edema is. It was a trickier game than I had thought about it. So the first failure was really, really important to me. And that sets me up for much more success later on. Although what's funny about the book is that it takes you through all the 7 summits, the highest peak on every continent, and the teams that you're with, who climbs, why they climb, how teams can be successful or fail based on how they're set up. And, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there.
Oh, I'm sure everybody you climb with has to be an interesting person. Nobody just goes out there to do it. I mean, there's something to it. When you're at that
and there's some interesting people that are there for different reasons, and you see some good guys and girls, you see some bad guys and girls, and when you're in an extreme environment, those characteristics of people really come out, and the shadows of people really come out. So if they're really good, that's amazing, and if they're really bad, that's exaggerated. Wow. So it's interesting to see that, kind of close up. So that also made the book quite interesting. And then the third chapter takes us through the pursuit of K2, the second highest mountain in the world, which is in Pakistan.
Which is also, I should mention, Vanessa is the first woman to successfully summit this.
First American and British. There's been other women before that, yeah. Oh. So I always have to correct that. But it is, for every 4 that climb, 1 dies, so it's a very, very, although it's the second highest, it's far less climb than Everest. There's only 380 summits.
What are they typically, what is the cause of death in most of these cases?
The cause of death is 85% of them are on descent, coming down from the summit, and it's because people usually expend everything on the way, getting to the top. But the problem with coming down is you have gravity forcing you down, and you're, knackered, tired, exhausted, dehydrated, and that gravity is kind of pushing you down. It's actually harder to come down in many ways than it is to step up, although stepping up takes effort. The sloppiness of descent and the gravity pushing you down makes the accidents easier, falling. You've got ice and snow, so slipping, avalanches, disappearance even with the weather conditions. So I would say falling, disappearance, accidents, along those lines.
All right, so can you describe the feeling? Because, someone who's never been up there and they have no idea, many of us, what does it feel like when you're at the top of the world, knowing that you're there?
Okay, so if it's not a movie,
Not a movie. Not a movie.
Yeah, not a movie. You're cold. Because it's going to be like 40 below. The winds are howling. You're tired. You're hungry. You're thirsty. Freezing, and a bit. Probably out of it. You're in something called the death zone. So, pretty much your body's dying, and cognitive failure, adrenal failure, pretty much everything you could imagine is starting to head south. But in the movies, of course, it's the high fives. Everybody's jumping for joy. The flags are flying. The music's playing. Tears and elation of joy, and it's everything you worked hard for.
Okay, I like the truth.
Yeah, me too.
Your description's a better one. That's something. I can't wait to read this. Is the book out and available yet, or is it tomorrow?
So tomorrow is the launch. Okay. And I actually wrote it to be funny, so it is very, very funny. It appeals to both, men and women, old and young. I mean, I was 45 when I stood on the summit of Everest, so it's really, it's not meant. It has expedition language, so please don't buy it if you're very young. Okay. But I would say it's a pretty intense book. It says, if you're stuck in life and you're looking for a challenge, it does not have to be mountains, but it will give you an open mind to take a look at life differently and, take on some challenges and challenge yourself. And it also tells you what you can rely on, which is all the life experience, skills, and knowledge that you have acquired. So when you pivot, nobody can take those away from you. So it teaches you to trust yourself in some of the decisions that you make, that you can always go back if you take a step forward.
You are an inspiration to a lot of people with this, Vanessa. I'm sure you're changing a lot of lives to the greatest heights. People should read this. Vanessa O'Brien. You said it's out and available tomorrow. I'm guessing you can pre-order now if you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for listening to The Rude Awakening Show on demand. The Rude Awakening Show is recorded live in the studios of WOCM. Any questions or feedback can be directed to Bulldog at ocean98.com. Tune in to The Rude Awakening Show live Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the best of rock. Ocean 98.
On the WakeUpCall. Vanessa, welcome in. How are you?
Hi, very good. Hi, Rob. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, listen, respect. I've seen you guys trying those MRE pizzas.
Oh my gosh, you actually watched the video of us eating the MRE pizzas?
Yeah, I just wanted to, you didn't ask the very important question whether it was in date.
You did a little research.
Yeah, I have to say, I got stuck with that stuff on mountains many, many times, and usually it's like 2 years out of date. So, they still pass that stuff off as edible even when it's out of date. So I was sort of laughing when you guys were eating it.
Did you do that for everybody that's talking to you today? Did you do a little homework?
Yeah, why not?
So let's talk about what kind of kid you were. You had kind of a, I guess, interesting is one way to put it, childhood.
Yeah, well, let's see. where does that tee off? Well, I was born in Michigan, so that's that little state that looks like a mitten. For those that have never been to the Midwest.
Talk like your adventures, though, because you had just looking at the synopsis, you had tragedies happen that probably, I don't know, if they kind of shaped you for looking for an outlet, maybe that's what mountaineering provides.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's a cold state, so it's interesting. One of the things that I did when I was young was a lot of ice fishing, so I was always out in the ice, always out in the cold. Somebody just asked me what it's like on the top of a mountain, and I said Hollywood version or real version, because of course there is it's always freezing, cold, you're tired, you're hungry, all those other things. But certainly I was used to the cold from a very, very young age, going out with my dad, ice fishing and stuff like that. And I knew that ice held from a very young age. I knew I could trust ice more than I think people who come across ice later on. Ice is very, very strong. Not for people to go across icy lakes and fall into them. So do test ice. So that is not an open invitation to walk across all ice. But in general, ice and rock are two different mediums, and they both have their challenges. But ice can be stronger than people first imagine it to be. But cold, I was used to the cold growing up as a kid for sure. And I think some of the early challenges for me was, I had early death and trauma in the family, which also allowed me to learn to be responsible early on, and to take responsibility early on, which probably set myself up fairly well later on as an adult to take care of things, and certainly to take care of things in a mountain.
I'm curious, of the 90%, okay, say of the 100%, you think it's 90% you're focused on staying alive, surviving. When you were thinking of the other things, the 8 to 10% fringe of you kind of contemplating your life or whatever, what were you thinking about up there on the mountain?
There's a lot of downtime because if you're climbing a peak that's 26,000 feet or higher, 8,000 meters, there's only 14 in the world. Those expeditions take 6 to 8 weeks, so there's a lot of downtime. And the reason they take so long is because your body is acclimatized, and you have to climb high, low, high, low, high, low, and over that time your body's building the red blood cells that they need to acclimatize to get to that higher altitude. You don't need oxygen to climb. I recommend oxygen at the final summit day because you can't trust the weather, and if you can't trust the weather, you risk losing what we call digits or fingers or toes, and that's happened to people I climb with. So you do need to acclimatize. You need to spend the time to do it. So what you think about is really trying to, when you're climbing, is to get rid of any negative thoughts, because a climbing from one place to another could be anywhere from a short day like 5 hours, or it could turn into something like 16 hours. And what you don't want is for your, I call it sort of the angel and the devil on the shoulder, but you don't want the negative voice to remind you how miserable you are. And if that voice comes in and starts to talk and say, but, you're higher than you've ever been, you're cold, you're tired, you should cut your losses, you're not going to be able to do this, that voice becomes more powerful than the voice that is there saying, come on, you're almost there, remember why you're here, remember how hard you worked, remember what you've got in your bag that you want to unveil at the summit, remember, you've got to have that willpower voice that's stronger to keep you moving one step higher and to raise that leg one step higher. That's got to be stronger, or you will turn around.
Vanessa, if you would, everything that I've read about K2 compared to Mount Everest suggests that K2 is way more difficult. In fact, to me, it's mind-boggling, either one of them, but it's way more difficult to scale than Everest. What is it about K2 that makes it so much more challenging?
So K2 is, I'd start with the shape. It's shaped like a triangle. Most mountains are not that conveniently shaped at that triangular face. So it starts right off asking for 100%. You're on that 40 to 60 degree slope. There's no reprieve. You're not able to kind of step off and, rest. You're just constantly on a slope and an angle. To get there, you have to fly into Pakistan, Islamabad, another you probably won't get a flight because the weather's always bad and the flights are always canceled. So you have to take a bus 48 hours, then you're on foot for another 7 days. If you've got a team of 12, that's going to be, 8 tons of equipment, TONS. That's going to be 250 porters taking you over a glacier. So it's not like Nepal where there's tea houses and you're being serviced to some degree in a nice place to stay along the way to Everest Base Camp. You're putting up your own tents. The glaciers are shifting and moving. They're tearing up boots and, big stones, little stones, melting water, all sorts of terrible things to get over. And then you finally get there. So it's hard to get to. And then the weather's completely unpredictable. On Everest, you see the lines on Everest every year, and people say, oh, look at this, it's terrible, the queue on Everest, which goes back to 2012. But you don't see the queues on K2 because the weather's so unpredictable. It doesn't matter when they climb. They're just, destined to fail regardless of that jet stream just pounds that thing like 200 miles an hour, every day. So it doesn't really matter what the weather forecast says. It's almost like Dante's Inferno. Pick your circle of hell that you want to, enter in at, and just try to get a little bit higher. Sometimes what is above knows what's below, but what is below does not know what is above. So you can only hope that, 300 meters or 1,000 feet higher, you're somewhere better.
I knew this time was going to go way too quick. Hours. The Explorer of the Year in 2018 will come down tomorrow to the greatest height. Vanessa will definitely have you back and give you success and keep climbing.
Okay, thank you so much, guys.
Our final guest, Explorer, Vanessa O'Brien. She's not going to tell you this, but Explorer of the Year from 2018. We've got a book to talk about. Excited to talk with Vanessa O'Brien on the line with us. And first off, Vanessa, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, Vanessa, when did the idea of exploration? I mean, were you one of those that was always out digging up in the backyard and wanting to climb everything that you had as a youngster?
Not really. I don't know if that was the perfect setup. I was just a suburban kid, totally next door, suburbs, probably of an age, though, before video games and all that technology. So probably played outdoors a little bit more than the kids do today. But, what's great about the book is when I look back, it's, there was no climbing necessarily forecast in my life whatsoever. And as I take on the pursuit of Everest, which really occurs to me at the height of the global recession, when I'm in financial services and I'm looking for something different to do, the first chapter is the pursuit of Everest, and I have no climbing experience whatsoever. So when I'm doing this, I'm taking the reader along with me and just Googling Everest. Where is it? How high is it? How do I learn how to climb? I mean, I know nothing about climbing, but I don't. What's interesting is because I'm in business, I don't look at climbing as, oh no, I can't do it. I look at it as a skill, and a skill can be taught and therefore learned. So that's what I find fascinating is the thing that stops most people I'm looking at as saying, well, wait a minute, it's just a skill. Why can't I go and learn it? What I need to know is if I'm any good at it and if I like it, which is a different mindset.
Now, what were the biggest mental challenges leading up to the first one, going even to Everest in the first place?
So really, I think what was, finding out how to climb. So mentally, I had to say, okay, here I am in a city. At the time, I was in Hong Kong, and saying, all right, I'll have to figure out how to learn how to climb, if I like it. That's a mental shift. But if you're walking, I see people walking around the city every day. They walk around rivers. They walk around parks. The point is, sometimes we have to get out of our house and walk around wherever we can. If it's a park, a city, if you have a river running through your city, wherever it is, and get outdoors. So if you're mildly fit in any way and just going for a walk, that's really what it starts. Climbing mountains is really the first part of it. The first third of it is just hiking. So a big part of a mountaineer's life is hiking. And so you don't really have to climb or want to climb or even want to climb a flight of stairs to understand what this book is about. It's really about doing something different and being motivated to step outside your comfort zone.
And Vanessa, for you to get the feedback from the readers and others that you've inspired, I mean, how does that motivate you to do even more, maybe step a little bit more out of your comfort zone again?
Yeah, so I think over time, I've been doing this now for 10 years. You can't close your eyes, right? So I have seen climate change, right? I can't not see it. So what I've started to do, maybe in the last 5 years, is start to become more of a citizen of science. And really, every single person can do this these days because there's apps on your phone. But you can start to take pictures. You can start to record stuff. You can, use your eyes through photography. You can, I've used myself as experiments. I've gone and taken samples of stuff. But now I feel much more compelled to give back and use. If I'm going somewhere that's hard to get to, then I want to take samples, say, of glaciers and bring them back so that we can see if there's any contamination. From fallout of, like Fukushima or some of these events, that will melt in the glaciers and end up in the irrigation systems or things like that. So you end up becoming more wise to how the world works and wanting to participate in it in a broader sense.
Where do you see the most impact that you've learned from your exploration and, like you said, from your testing and things like that in your day-to-day life?
The biggest impact... it's funny. It's hard to say. That the science can take you only so far. I think, and part of the reason for the book is actually the book came about mostly from people that I talked to, because I would give a talk and people would say, "Well, you can't make this stuff up. Like Hollywood couldn't make this stuff up. Some of the things that happen to you on expedition, the people that you're with, the stories that occurred, that happen." And they all would say, like, well, when is the book coming out? And the book is really, probably going to be the biggest impact, because I think it has the biggest ability to potentially help change people's way of thinking about their ability to do things that they can't do, because it allows you to think of ways in, stepping. If you take a step forward, you have a data point and you know whether you like something or you don't like something. You can always go back because the skills, knowledge, and experience you have acquired are always yours. So it gives you confidence to do stuff that you may not know that you have. And, there's just... The book doesn't preach. It uses humor, and it's mountaineering is a metaphor and all that stuff. But there's hidden stuff in there.
And again, that book we were talking about, To the Greatest Heights, it is available tomorrow. And Explorer Vanessa O'Brien, I want to make sure and let our listeners know where they can keep up with everything you've got going social media-wise as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Well, thanks again for joining me for this 51st episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. If you ever have a comment, question, or anything else you'd like to know, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at GQ with Cam.